Welcome to DoD Secure, and I'm your host, Jeff Bennett. It's good to be back with you. After a while, I've taken a little hiatus from recording while I studied this new NISPOM, and I do it in air quotes for a reason, because in spite of what I've heard from industry, I don't believe we are getting a new NISPOM as of yet. But what has happened is, as the title of this thing goes, NISPOM is being codified. Guidance is provided to cleared defense contractors, and there are conflicting CFRs. And I'll go over more of that in just a second. And so if you don't go any further than this podcast or video, just realize that nothing changes as far as the current NISPOM as printed and as published by DoD still stands. I encourage you to read further. Now, the genesis of all this buzz is online, and I'm going to show that to you in a minute. But here's a few points. 32, now the regulation is called 32 CFR Part 117, and 32 CFR Part 2004 are redundant requirements. They both are documents that talk about National Industrial Security Program. DoD will no longer be printing its DoD Manual 5220.22. This is the NISPOM that's printed, and it's the one that was issued in 32 CFR Part 117. So consider that the part that's getting cast out of all the CFRs. Part 117 is leaving. The NISPOM that has been published is based on 32 CFR Part 117. The one that is remaining is 32 CFR Part 2004, and it is also called National Industrial Security Program. It is the one that is remaining. So basically, we're talking about assembling and removing redundant CFRs. There's a reorganization going on, and so this guidance that came out is talking specifically about that reorganization. But the interesting thing is, this document also says that NISPOM Change 2 is still a requirement that cleared defense contractors must follow. So even though it's not being published as DoD 5220.22, it still stands. So I'm not sure what is going to happen with this. But let's look at some background, and we'll move over to my desk so that I can go through this document with you and show you a few things. Let's talk about the NISPOM. So the NISPOM in its current form is still standing, and there is even a link to it in the document. So let's go look at the actual document. All right, so this is called CFR Part 117, and it is newly written on December 21st of 2020, and anybody who wants to review it can review it and leave comments. So this is a multi-page document that has some good reading in it, but mostly it is, it's not the NISPOM, it's talking about changes. So the purpose of this podcast is just to tell you about it overarching and one major change that will be coming up. All right, so streamlining is the focus of this. So the reason for this is that this CFR just codifies, and that's a fancy legal term that means arranging laws or rules into a systematic code. So the CFR is already a code. It's basically the Code of Federal Regulations. And so we want to arrange the Code of Federal Regulation into a systematic code. So there is duplication. There's a reorganization of laws to remove the duplication and create efficiency or increase efficiency. What's unclear is that while the contractors are still required to follow the latest NISPOM, what's unclear is how the government will communicate the NISPOM Change 2 requirement, especially when the DoD Manual 5220.22 will no longer be published in its current form. So on one hand, we're going to keep the current NISPOM. On the other hand, we're not publishing it anymore. So it's So there are a few possibilities that we'll go over. So the main reason for this is streamlining the requirements, so there are not redundant requirements out there. So I'll also focus in this on one of the most relevant and seemingly logical changes based on NISPOM roles. And that role is with the Director of National Intelligence. You might know that the NISPOM is the oversight of the NISPOM, and the participation in NISPOM requirements is shared by the Department of Defense, Department of Energy, and the Director of National Intelligence. So one of these changes or updates or clarifications makes sense logically as why it's put in, but the actual requirement itself is pretty revolutionary, and I'll tell you why. You might remember that the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, has a large role in developing the NISPOM and overseeing it. Primarily, their role was to oversee the protection of national intelligence information in the hands of cleared contractors. Of course, I'm simplifying it. But DNI also has an executive role in relation to the publication of Executive Order 13467. And that's called Reforming Processes Related to Suitability for Government Employee Fitness for Contractor Employees and Eligibility for Access to National Classified National Security Information. So what does that sound like? That sounds like background investigations, right? That sounds like the adjudication process on how people are evaluated for positions of national trust. DNI then became the executive security agent for the development and implementation and oversight of the effective, efficient, and uniform policies and procedures. And these govern the conduct of the investigations and adjudications for eligibility for classified information access and eligibility to hold those sensitive positions. And of course, these are the SF-85 and the SF-86. These are the requests for these evaluations. Now, later in December of 2016, later meaning after the release of NISPOM Change 2, DNI issued the Security Executive Agent Directive 3, number 3. These are reporting requirements for personnel with access to classified information or who hold a sensitive position to execute to the executive branch agencies or covered individuals with the effective date of June 12, 2017. Okay, that's a lot of words. And so if you're looking at this, most of these pages are covering what was said. There's a lot of writing here to say what I said in these 2 paragraphs. There are definitions of covered employees. There are legalese describing what this SEAD 3 is saying, but I'm just going to simplify it for you. The SEAD 3 intent is to promote consistency in personnel security reporting requirements for all covered individuals. This ties in well with their role in the NISPOM, as well as the intent to strengthen the safeguarding of national security equities, such as national security information, personnel, facilities, and technology. So the logical flow is, because of DNI's role in the NISPOM, as well as their role in making background checks and granting of security clearances and protection of classified information, it makes sense that this would be clarified in the current NISPOM. So there are writings to that effect. So what does this really mean for cleared contractors? The definition of covered employee just means it extends to all defense contractors with a security clearance in working on classified contracts. So all of us in that situation fall under this. To me, there was no need to define what a covered employee meant, or a covered person, or